Hi, welcome back to my channel. It is basically Halloween, so I don't know whether I'm just like being a bit neurotic or whatever, but I don't tend to be neurotic. Take this for what it is. I kind of noticed something recently, where it's not like I noticed it, but it's a bit of a quirky universe type theory, but it's kind of obvious, which is that we always get a second chance in different seasons of life. And I just was thinking the other day, and I was like, I feel like at certain periods of time in my life, I just have a chance at doing something that didn't have a chance for last time. Um, that's kind of, when you say it like that, it sounds quite obvious and not quirky. But for example, like I would see if you'd want to do this as well, because I've written down a list of basically where I was. There's no specific amount of time ago that this was, but it's where I feel like I was last cycle, if that makes sense. Probably not. I can't give a specific time. It must have been about 2018 or 2019. I don't know if I'm looking at like 3 year cycles here, but I just would say like at some point I feel like it's like last cycle. For example, I had a boyfriend, and the contrast that I'm having in this season, which this cycle, shall I say, this is what I mean. It's hard to describe when I say cycle because this could have been whatever amount of time ago, 4 years, 3 years ago, but there's no specific time period. It just feels like this time last cycle. Let's just put it with that. This is why we're calling it a bit of a astrological situation. For example, last cycle, I feel like I had a boyfriend that I was with. I've seen my best friend. And for example, the opposite in this season that I'm finding is obviously I'm single, and I don't see that friend at this point. Kind of like I don't know whether I'll see her in the future, but it was, when I say best friend, it was a best friend from school, so I don't really know whether we've kind of like divided paths, which is kind of a contrast. I was having a lot of fun clubbing. I don't go clubbing a lot at the moment. You could say, oh, obviously, like I don't like it when people say like, oh, obviously, because like an observation is kind of an observation within reason. Obviously, I know some people have some really weird ideas. I'm probably one of them. Basically, I was. I mean, a lot of them are like personal, so I won't like go into this. With my work life, I was having to do a lot of early mornings, whereas now I'm literally able to sleep in as long as I want within reason. Like, I'm not within reason, I'm literally able to sleep in as long as I want. And it's like, because I did have to get up so early, I was catching a train. I was getting up at like 6:30 in the morning, or like no, like six, like half five, 6 o'clock a lot of the time, because I was traveling backwards and forwards between boyfriend's house, which was like 40 minutes on the train. So I was so busy at one point. I was like doing like 14-hour shifts, and I'd like get an Uber over to where he was living. Like, it's the complete opposite. This is what I mean. It's like the opposite of what I'm doing now. I'm living like this completely chilled life, and it wasn't like this before. Like, I literally was doing, I worked full time, and I had a boyfriend, and I was traveling to his house. I was very codependent, so I literally wanted to be with him like all the time. And I would not sort of like not being there, and he'd literally be like, why don't you just stay at home? And I'd be like, no, can I come over anyway? Like, sometimes he'd be like, no, you cannot come over, but that was unlikely because he was quite nice and liked me to come over, and often I would want to come over more than he'd want to come over to mine, just because like he was like more normal and didn't have that codependency issue. um yeah, I just felt very overworked at work. I actually got to the point where it's unsurprising. I moved. Also, I was living in an area that I really felt very away from home. Like, now, it's the complete opposite. I feel very homely where I live at this point, because even though my family have moved away, I actually find that I get a bit more strength when I'm not around my family all the time, just because like it makes me feel more independent, which is a place I thrive in. So, um, I'm quite close in proximity to a friend of mine. I live very close to an ex, even though like we're not together anymore. It's kind of like I know someone else. Um, like, I went to a meetup recently where I know a couple of people around the area. Like, I'm very close proximity to like a few of my friends, like a bus journey or whatever. Like, I used to have a friend that lived down the road. Well, an ex-friend, an ex situationship that used to live down the road. He doesn't live there anymore. Um, but I feel very sort of like comfortable where I'm living. Like, I feel like I just sort of live in like a sort of like nice area-ish that isn't too high maintenance, because I've definitely lived in different places before where I felt like very far away from home. Like, when I was this cycle last time, I was living in an area that was very like different than what I was used to, very quiet in comparison. And I always used to love coming back to where I live, because I just felt at home, and like it was more busy. It was more what I was used to. So that's like the opposite as well. Um, I liked traveling on trains a lot, whereas now I do like traveling. And if you were like, okay, you've got a free train ticket for a week, I'd be like, amazing, I'll go on loads of trains. But now I do find it a little bit of an inconvenience to go on long journeys, because I'm kind of like used to that. So I think also it's like a level of swing back, but it's really interesting to me how like loads of these things are like not necessarily the polar opposite. I'm just trying to like get in alignment with like the way that things work. Like it's not always the case. Like I'm not gonna say like this is like a rule, because like it's, you can't like determine things like this. And like, and I just feel like it's interesting how last cycle I did something, and then this cycle I did something different. It's just an observation. So also, yeah, I'm not gonna go through all my issues. Also, I was meeting so many new people back then, because I was like a support worker. I was meeting loads of people at work, and then outside of work I would make an effort to meet new groups of people and like make new friends. Obviously I was living in an area I didn't know as well, so like I'd want to like find people to socialise with and stuff now, whereas now I'm kind of content with my friendship group, even though I'm kind of somewhat going through a couple of friendship breakups, which kind of sucks. But it's one of those things where you like never know what the outcome's going to be, like whether I'll work it out with them or whether I'll come distant and still see them a little bit, or it's up in the air at the moment. A couple of people, but I had a lot of focus on clothes. At one point, I had a very large thing about clothes at one point, which is kind of personal, but I don't really care about clothes that much anymore. I care about clothes. I like clothes, but I don't sort of like have a massive collection of them anymore. I was doing a lot of songwriting, which is now I do get my creative juices out, but it's not songwriting based always, which is a shame, because I do like songwriting. But then I think back to how I was. Sometimes I did have emotional blocks, but I did go through a phase last cycle, I feel like, that I used to just literally pour out my every thought into a song. Like it would make me, that was my way of expressing myself. Whereas now I feel like I've actually evolved a lot of different ways of expressing myself, which is really nice, because I think at one point that was like a big expressive outlet for me, where if I wasn't able to write a song or write it down, I would kind of struggle a bit. Whereas like now I literally haven't written a song. Well, I did write one the other day, but apart from that I don't really write them all the time anymore. But I have like various outlets to release my outlet of creativity and etc., that sort of thing, emotion and all that. I was very stressed due to my like circumstances, and now I'm relatively chilled. I have gone through, obviously we've been through a pandemic, so you can't say, but I've also had a chilled lifestyle, shall I say, and I've had the opportunity to allow myself, I've made a concerted effort to be as relaxed as I can be, obviously because we've been in a pandemic. And also noticed back then I kind of was in a bit of a go with the flow kind of mentality for various reasons. I was quite young, and as I said, there wasn't much time to think about what I was going to consciously do, whereas now I have a lot of time to consciously think, and I'm choosing to be very selective and mindful about my decisions and people in my life, and choices and jobs and everything like that. So it's really interesting, and I'm sorry if I was a bit of a ramble about myself, but it's just interesting because it means I don't think you can necessarily predict what you're going to experience, but also it's a bit of a validation thing. But I guess if you're like, because I'm like, maybe I'm not supposed to have a boyfriend in this season, like I'm literally not looking for a boyfriend at all. Like I literally don't feel like I want one at this point, actually, to be honest. But it's also like that thing where it's like, you know, I wonder if I can write down some things, and then I'm like, okay, this might happen if I had this happen last season. But then that kind of gets into the realms of like trying to predict the future, and no one can predict the future, because like, yeah. But I just think it's really interesting how I've gone through a cycle or something, and then I'm going through the something that, you know, will happen, something like the opposite happens, if you like, season after. So yes. Feel free to do this yourself if you don't think it's too quirky or whatever. Yeah, but I just do a quick video about it. So yeah, thanks for listening. Bye.